Hi, I'm Leonie West from Westerly Design, and I'm going to show you how to sew our Spinning Wreath 16 with Echo. This tool comes in 5 different sizes: 3.5 inch, 5.5 inch, 7.5 inch, 9.5 inch, and our 11.5 inch. With our Wreath 16 Echo series, we have 2 pinholes. One, the one down at the bottom through the crosshairs, is the one that we use for sewing our wreath. The next one is the one we use for sewing our Echo. So we'll change the position depending on the tool. On our smaller one, you'll notice that our pinhole is over here and we have a second line. That line that runs up to the top of the Echo template is the line that we will use to align with our crosshair reference lines. I've marked 16 reference lines. I've placed our locating pin through the center. I'm going to put my template over the locating pin. I'm going to line up my reference line that matches that locating pin. Bringing my threads up here just next to my reference line, and I'm going to sew around the template. This is the 7.5 inch size. We will sew around from there. We'll sew down to the bottom, and when we get to the little kick, the boot shape down here, we're going to sew across. We're going to go back on that line, and we're now going to sew back up to where that B reference is marked here. So we're sewing from A to B to C to D, D back to C, and back to B. I'm now going to rotate the template. I'm going to line the reference line up again, and I'm going to stitch around the next portion. We will do this 16 times to complete the wreath. Remember, your reference lines are your best friends. Back to here, back up the side, keeping the template in place. We're not moving the template to do that back stitching. And stitch the next one. The line that runs across from the B is the line that gives us an indication of where we need to stop at. We're now going to sew back up to B. Turn the template again. When I originally designed this template, I didn't think about putting an echo on it. So we had wreath number 16. It's been in our range for a long time. And I was sitting there one day trying to figure out how to put an echo around it. And originally it would have been another template to go with it. But if you notice, the echo dips in. We actually sew half of each portion of the echo and then rotate, and that was the way I could make the echo work and have it on one template. So there's a gentle kick down the bottom and back up again. Always check that reference line. If you find your reference line, for some reason you've gone off and your reference line is not aligning, this portion of the template up the top, where the foot's sitting at the moment, is a place that I can actually move the template just slightly to add a stitch in or take a stitch out to keep that reference line in place. Sometimes it will move slightly if your tension is a bit tight on your machine and you're causing a little bit more draw up. Draw up shrinks everything that we quilt. So sometimes the draw up will cause a noticeable change in the size of the pattern. Everything gets smaller as we quilt it, but if your tension is tight, your draw up is bringing it in even more. So we're just going back again. So be aware of that factor of draw up. That's why not all the templates, but most of them have a place where we can actually move if we need to. I'm slightly too high, so my reference line wasn't in place. I just did one stitch back. I'm almost halfway through. Back up to B and rotate. I have two more portions of the reef to stitch. I like the way the circle forms in the centre. I like it being double stitched because it gives a bit more definition. We're back up to B. We're going to now turn the template for the last one. When I look at this, I'm just going to bring these threads out of the way for you. When I look at here, I'm looking at it saying, my line's in place. Where am I going to land there? Well, I'm not terribly worried about that. Because my threads are sitting here, we have a way, if you stitch slightly more, or if it's shrunk for a reason and your line crosses over, which I'm hoping this one will do so I can show you, and it did. I'll show you how we bring that stitch back in a moment. So we're back to the centre. We're going to sew down. I'm going to sew back up again. We want all of these lines that are going out to be double stitched. We don't want to stop in the centre and have that one so it's not double stitched. I'm going to bring my thread tails up now. Just bring that thread up. I'll cut that off and out of my way. Move this one away. As you can see, just in here, my original thread tails. It's sitting out beyond where I want it to be. Very easy to fix, and this is why one of the reasons I like to start up here. I can just bring that bobbin thread up here, and usually I'll leave one stitch over, but today I've got 3 so that you could see what I'm going to do, and I'll bring my threads back. One more to go, which is the one that's coming up from underneath. So there's my bottom, my first tails. They are now in line with here. That is just by taking those stitches back. I'm going to use a self-threading needle, top-loading needle. I've just threaded that thread, and I'm going to tie a knot about 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch from where my stitches came out. I'm now going to go in under the stitches, through the batting. I'm just wiggling that needle and my tails are gone. I'll do the same with the other one. So our self-threading needle, holding the 2 threads, push the threads through the top of the needle. We make a little knot, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, under the stitches, weave it through, give it a pull, and our tails are all gone. That is how we sew wreath number 16. I'm now going to add the echo. So we are going to stitch around this top portion. We're going to use the second pinhole, the one that lines up with the echo. That will line up with our reference lines. We're going to sew from here over to here. So I'll bring my threads up. We're actually starting in the middle of the echo. We're not starting down in here where we'd normally start an echo if you were freehanding it. We're actually starting in this middle portion of that wreath. So here we go. Reference line in place, and we're just going to sew. Stop, turn the template, make sure the reference line lines up. Stop when we get to the edge, turn the template, line up the reference line. It's really easy to get a very effective echo around the wreath doing this. Much easier than freehanding it. And I think it looks prettier than a free-handed echo because it's more even, more accurate. All we're doing is moving the template, lining up that reference line, stitching around. Again, if you found you had draw up causing it to pull in, this is the part of the template, that high point. That's the part of the template that you can gain a stitch or two on if you need to. You can't gain a stitch in the center point. You can't lose a stitch in the center point. So we'll just look at that. One more stitch and away I go. I can't stop it from drawing up. It's just the nature of the process. But I can make allowances for it when I need to. And we're almost back to the beginning. It is also much faster than if I was freehanding this. Any of our templates that we have an echo on, they work the same way. Follow the line from the centre of the echo to the pinhole, and that is the pinhole that you use. And when we get back to here, we want these two to bump into each other. Around and landed perfectly in the same. The start of the first stitch is the end of the last stitch. One wreath with echo. So wreath number 16 with its tail sewn in. We have the double stitching around the circle, double stitching on all of these lines. Our echo goes around. You can use that echo with another template. So if you had done an embroidery and had an embroidery hem, you wanted to put a nice detail around the edge, you can use the echo on its own.